What's going on, guys? It is Wednesday, and if it is Wednesday, it is time for Story Time with Taffy, episode number 12. If you've been paying attention to the channel and keeping up with current Taffy events, you know that last week I turned in my grad school application to the VCU Brand Center for Advertising. Woof, my wife and I are waiting on pins and needles to hear whether or not we were accepted. I say we, because we all busted our ass really hard for several months trying to get this thing off the ground. The application itself was easily the most challenging academic thing I've ever had to do in my life, so we're all just kind of nervous with a good, excited, nervous energy to see how it goes. And of course, the PA Army being rewarded for all of your diligence and actually all of your support and patience with us over this entire thing. I'll let you know as I know what's coming up and what's coming out. I literally think I'm going to open the letter saying yay or nay right here on camera for you, and I'll upload it that day. So as we know more, you will know more. So now, on to story time. I'm going to bastardize a comment. I'm going to change it. I'm going to take a suggestion, I'm going to twist it a little bit to fit what I want to tell, because the story I want to tell kind of ties into the whole advertising thing. Mr. Karate Kid 93 wants me to tell a story being nostalgic about high school parties. As you can imagine, in southern Idaho in a town of 7,000, the high school parties kind of sucked. And I didn't drink, smoke, or do drugs because my parents set me up with a sort of contract. And they told me that if I could get through high school without smoking, drinking, or doing drugs, they would give me $1,000 cash as a graduation present. And in a town of 7,000, I'm not going to be able to get away with any of that without it being gossiped back to my parents, because everyone knows everyone. So I will tell a high school story. It'll just be tweaked a little bit. I always had kind of a panache or a talent or a knack for being able to spot trends and to see fads and fashions that were coming up. And there were even a couple times where I started one just to see if I could get it to catch. I saw a point where frisbees were big and then everyone bought a frisbee. I saw a point where yo-yos were big and everyone bought a yo-yo. So I started bringing little pocket-sized 99-cent squirt guns to school to see if it would catch on. And the next thing you know, sure enough, 2 weeks later, people are buying like $75 super soakers and bringing them to school. 2 out of 3 children are carrying some sort of squirt gun around it. Now I pointed at it and I thought to myself, man, I kind of manipulated that into being. There was one time though that I did it inadvertently, and there's a reason that I've nicknamed this episode Evil Taffy. I will tell this story, and some of you, especially younger guys that feel kind of jaded about women in general, are gonna want to pat me on the back, but ultimately, I'm kind of the douchebag villain in this story. So let's start at the beginning. It's about my sophomore year in high school, and I'm on the football team, and we go across the river and we play our crosstown rivals, Twin Falls High School, and we lose. And we had convinced ourselves that it was a game that we could win, and we lost it in the final seconds, and it was demoralizing and nasty and bad. And as we're walking to our bus to leave, we look up and we see 2 cheerleaders that are friends of ours and go to the same classes as us. Obviously not as crushed about the game because they've wandered over to the cute players on the winning team and are flirting. At the time, this felt like a huge deal. Looking back in retrospect, I probably should have cared less, considering the fact that I wasn't romantically linked to either of them, nor was I really interested. But for whatever reason, at 16 years old, I felt slighted like a motherfucker. So I decided that I was going to do something. I needed to lash out, but I didn't want to just walk up and be like, hey, you guys are bitches for hanging out with the enemies, rawr. So being the creative creature that I am, I go home and I actually create letterhead for the Twin Falls School District administrative offices. And I write out a letter from what turns out to be the head of the cheerleading department there, and I actually did the research to find out who that person would be, and I typed it out and asked these 2 cheerleaders if they would like to be a part of the Twin Falls cheer team, that they had shown such unwavering support for the team despite the fact that they were obviously cheering for the other side, that we felt obligated to go ahead and extend an invitation to let them formally join us. And I felt like this was so snarky and backbiting, and wondered if they'd think it was serious and make phone calls, and I daydreamed about all of the confusion and turmoil it would cause in their lives. So I mailed the letters off. I actually went over to the city and mailed them from the city 13 miles away, so the stamp would have the correct mailing point of origin on it. And I sat and I waited, and I'm not really sure what I thought I was waiting for. I sat and I waited, and I hoped maybe that I would see them or hear them somehow express that they had gotten these letters, but nothing ever came. I never saw anything to satisfy the evil little demon inside me that wanted them to be upset. So these 2 cheerleaders also happened to have birthdays on back-to-back days in November, and I decided that I was going to play even more pranks because I wanted to see a visual response. And I don't know why, because days later at this point I don't even even care about the fact that I was originally upset over a football game. Now I just have decided that this is a project. And so I formulate a plan, and with my buddy Mike, we decide to try to lightly sabotage their 16th birthday. And we're not going to do anything horrible. We're not going to like spray paint their car or throw red paint on them in the middle of the hallways. We just want to be subversive enough that we evoke a response, and once we have that response, we're convinced we'll totally be done. So we actually spend days prepping this event, and what we didn't realize is that it actually went viral in real life. Here's kind of a breakdown of the timeline of events. We showed up, and the first thing I did was you could go and leave messages and notes and cards at the office, and they would post them up on a wall, and if you saw an envelope or something with your name on it or a tag, you could take it to the office and they'd either hand you whatever letter or box or package was left there by a parent or a friend or whatever. So I went and I got a card that had a big fat lady eating cake on the front, and it said, "On your birthday, invite a bunch of plumbers over to your birthday party." On the inside it said, "That way no matter how much cake you eat, your ass will look small by comparison." And underneath it was supposed to say happy birthday, but I blacked out happy with a Sharpie marker, so it just said birthday. And then I put together like 2 packages full of nothing but packing styrofoam nuts, and I wrapped them up to look really nice and pretty so that when they opened them, there'd be nothing inside. And I thought that would be enough, but ultimately I didn't see any of that stuff go to them, so I didn't get the expressed feeling of seeing and getting some sort of cathartic release that I wanted. So I took it one step further, and it was the one step further that ultimately almost landed me in a shitload of trouble. My buddy Mike and I decided that we were going to cut up strips of a black shirt and put these girls' initials on it, and we did. And at the end of their initials we wrote sucks. So we'll say A and B. We put A and B sucks, and we wrote them on these sort of homemade black wristbands, did it with whiteout so it really stuck out, and we put them on. And we wore them around, and people said, "What does A and B sucks stand for?" And we said, "Oh, didn't you hear? A and B at this game were fraternizing with the enemy right after we lost and totally made us feel like assholes. So on their birthday, for this 2-day festival of we hate them, we're going to wear these wristbands that say A and B suck." So the first day, it kind of traveled back to them that we were doing this, and I finally got the release I wanted. Like, they were looking at me in the halls, and I was like, yeah, you suck. I couldn't just say this in the beginning. I had to make this big production out of it, but yeah, you suck. So we went home and kind of, reveled in our victory. And then the next day we came back to school. Hundreds of knockoff bands are now floating around that say A and B suck, that people have made at home overnight, and we have launched this sort of huge overreacting counterattack on these 2 girls whose only sin they had committed was they went to go talk to somebody who'd just beaten us in a sporting event. So here we are shitting on their 16th birthday, which if you're not a 16-year-old girl, you don't necessarily know that that's kind of a big deal. That's that and your wedding day are 2 of your big milestone landmarks. And here you have a couple of your co-students just shitting all over you, and now the entire student body's turned on you. And from here on out, it turns into me putting out a series of brush fires, because now I've got varsity football players that are friends with these girls threatening to kill me, and 2 of them actually hit me so hard in practice later that day that it cracked my helmet. I have the teachers that run the cheerleading squad there at the high school threatening to suspend me. I managed to actually get all of it pinned on one of the last guys who joined the quote-unquote movement. I feel really bad, Chris, if you're listening to this. I'm really sorry that you almost got suspended and got your ass chewed out. And ultimately, I had to take my sorry ass down there and just apologize to the girls and throw myself at their mercy, because the backlash was starting to become real, and actual sort of suspensions were talked about being handed out because I had kind of incited a quiet riot. I'm still kind of impressed with the coordination and the effort and the reception that was given to it. Hopefully, if I get accepted into grad school, I can use my powers for good. And A and B, if you're out there and you have any idea who I am and who you are, I'm still really sorry about that. I'm willing to bet that they've either forgotten about it or forgotten about me. Who knows? Either way, story time. Episode number 12 is in the books. Remember to go down and leave me some comments, suggestions, and ideas for next time. I made the mistake of asking just for people you'd like to see play with us in the last episode and got next to no suggestions. So this time, flood me. I won't even cloud your mind with like other things, like all the other banal shit that I normally ask for. Flood me with suggestions this time. Let's get the ball kick-started and rolling. Let's tear open the book that is Taffy's life and take a look at some of the most interesting pop-out pages and see what happened. Until then, on behalf of the Mr. Woofles channel, my name is Taffy and I am out.